Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into the hidden science that transforms raw oak into the magic vessel that gives wine its signature flavor. It's a seriously fascinating journey, one that blends physical engineering, complex chemistry, and, believe it or not, a surprising amount of biology to create the perfect aging environment. Okay, let's just look at this beautiful glass of wine for a second. Have you ever stopped to think about where those really complex sensory notes actually come from? Pouring a glass of an exceptional vintage is basically experiencing the culmination of years of meticulous preparation. But as we'll see, it's definitely not as simple as just dumping grape juice into a wooden bucket. So the big question is, what actually gives your absolute favorite vintage that perfect, smoky vanilla flavor? Well, you might be tempted to just credit the soil, the climate, or the specific grapes. And sure, those are the foundational elements, right? But they absolutely do not tell the whole story of that final complex profile you experience in the glass. And that brings us to Section 1, the secret in the barrel. To really find our answers, we have to look right past the vineyard, to the unsung hero of winemaking. Yep, the oak barrel. So here's the fundamental problem we start with. In its natural state, freshly cut oak is literally packed with water. Now, this water content obviously varies depending on the exact species of oak and where it grew, but across the board, it makes raw wood inherently flawed for winemaking. Think about it. If a cooper tried to build a barrel with fresh, wet wood, that high moisture percentage would cause massive deformations and severe cracks as it eventually dried out. And even worse, it would release these incredibly harsh, astringent compounds that would totally ruin the wine's carefully crafted flavor profile. No way we want that. To solve this massive problem, we move to Section 2. Methods of drying oak. The industry essentially relies on three primary methods to hit the perfect physical balance before a barrel is ever even assembled. Let's break down these three main strategies. First up, natural drying. This is highly traditional, basically relying on the great outdoors to gradually evaporate moisture over weeks or even months. And while it definitely has that historical romance, it can be pretty unpredictable, leaving the wood totally exposed to the elements and bringing a moderate risk of cracking. Then we have kiln drying. This takes mere days. By using special ovens to precisely control temperatures, we're talking between 40 and 100 degrees Celsius, coopers can carefully manage the humidity and keep that cracking risk low. Finally, there's steam drying, which is largely reserved for the really premium barrels. By pre-treating the wood with steam right before the kiln, the transition from wet to dry is incredibly smooth, minimizing internal stress and keeping the risk of cracks very, very low. You can actually clearly see the contrast in approaches right here. On the left, we've got natural drying. This demands slow patience, with the planks carefully stacked to make sure there's enough spacing to maximize airflow and sun exposure on the widest faces. And then on the right, that's the high-heat, controlled efficiency of kilns. It scientifically manages every single variable of temperature and relative humidity to prevent those sudden, jarring changes that naturally warp the wood. All right, once it's dry, we enter Section 3, the maturation magic. This is where physical changes give way to pure chemical evolution. The wood isn't just sitting there idle, it is actively transforming from the inside out. The absolute true magic of this maturation lies in what's called the phenolic composition. As the wood loses water, the chemical compounds inside it, specifically those harsh tannins and lignins, literally break down and reorganize themselves. It's an invisible chemical evolution happening right inside the solid planks. If this vital reorganization doesn't happen, or, if someone tries to rush it, the wine eventually aged in that barrel is going to be unpleasantly bitter, and nobody wants that. So this chemical evolution deliberately knocks out those bitter, undesirable flavors and instead preps the wood to release just incredible aromatic notes. Compounds derived from lignin actually transform into the very elements that will eventually harmonize with your wine. We are talking about rich vanilla, sweet coconut, warm baking spices, deeply roasted toast, and lingering smoke. These are not added ingredients and they aren't artificial flavorings. They're the completely natural result of oak chemistry evolving perfectly over time. But chemistry isn't acting alone here. Welcome to Section 4, the microscopic workforce. This is an invisible ecosystem that most people completely overlook. Prepare for a bit of a plot twist. The drying and maturation process actually isn't sterile at all. Nope. Fungi and bacteria are actively eating the barrel, basically acting as microscopic sommeliers to improve the taste of your wine. That's right, living microorganisms are an essential, super active part of shaping the wood's final character.
And this microscopic influence actually kicks off long before the trees even cut down, way deep in the soil of the forest. Here we see mycorrhizal fungi forming symbioses with tree roots. These little networks help the living oak tree absorb nutrients and water. So, this early symbiotic relationship indirectly lays the entire biological foundation for the wood's eventual composition, density, and overall quality.
Fast forward a bit to the actual drying of the staves at the cooperage, and we start to see visual evidence of this ongoing microbial labor. Take a look at these dark marks. Those are staining fungi. They heavily colonize the wood and alter it aesthetically. Now, while they might make the outside of the wood look a bit distressed or weathered, they generally don't destroy it structurally. They're really just one visible part of this massive, complex ecosystem living right on the lumber. Now, these unpaid laborers have highly specific jobs, and frankly, not all of them are beneficial if left unchecked. Decomposition fungi break down cellulose and lignin, gently altering the wood's physical texture. Aromatic fungi, they are the absolute heroes of the process, producing unique enzymes that create those complex, desirable flavor compounds we love. And some acetic acid bacteria even add distinct, pleasant aromas. However, rot fungi are a fatal threat. They thrive in high humidity and can fatally weaken the wood. Meanwhile, certain rogue acetic acid bacteria can produce volatile metabolites that will quickly make your incredibly expensive wine taste exactly like vinegar. Not good.
Because of these dangerous players, we desperately need Section 5, controlling the ecosystem. This wild environment must be super carefully managed with a really delicate balance of biology and engineering just to prevent that rot and those vinegar-like defects. So coopers effectively act as scientists, managing this microscopic world through 4 precise steps to ensure microbial competition always works out in their favor. First, careful wood selection. You just avoid timber that's already heavily contaminated from the forest. Easy. Second, strict environmental condition control, meaning precise management of temperature and relative humidity keeps those dangerous rot fungi from ever getting a foothold. Third is disinfection, which is an absolutely crucial step to reset the microbial load. And fourth, constant microbiological monitoring and analysis. This allows coopers to make highly informed biological decisions before a single drop of wine ever touches the wood. To execute that super crucial third step, disinfection, coopers use massive equipment, like these specialized wooden autoclaves. By applying highly controlled heat treatments and steam right inside these giant chambers, they can successfully eliminate or dramatically reduce the microbial load. This rigorous process is what ensures the wood maintains its absolute structural integrity and that only the highly beneficial aromatic developments make it all the way through to the final barrel. So the next time you sit back and enjoy a glass of fine-aged wine, ask yourself, are you really just tasting the grapes? Or are you tasting the careful drying, the precise chemical maturation, and the invisible microscopic ecosystem of the oak? It completely changes how you appreciate the complex origins of what's in your glass, doesn't it? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. I really hope you found the hidden science of the barrel just as fascinating as I do.